So this is David Evans. I'm here in Brasilia with Carlos Ragazzo. Have I pronounced that correctly, Carlos?
Almost. Good enough.
Okay. Carlos is the superintendent of CADE, and CADE, of course, is the antitrust authority in Brazil, and it's the only one now, as I understand. Carlos, there have been lots of changes in CADE recently, and Brazilian antitrust generally. I want to talk to you about that, but before we do that, let's talk about you just for a little bit. What is your role as superintendent of CADE?
I would say that I'm kind of the gatekeeper to all of the cases. Mainly all of the mergers. They first come to me, and whenever they have some sort of trouble, should I decide to challenge them, to impose remedies, then I have to go to the tribunal. So I kind of sort out what's a complex case from the simple, the fast-track cases. And that's merger-wise. Going to anti-competitive conducts, basically I do all of the investigation, and once I start a formal proceeding and I decide to impose a sanction for that, or even to shelve the case, then I would have to send the case to the tribunal. Their decision is final. I'm just the gatekeeper.
Sounds like you're minimizing your role. Much more important than that, really.
Well, I would say that I am kind of the CEO to a board.
Right. And before becoming superintendent, back at CADE before the new law, you were a commissioner. Is that correct?
Yes.
What's more fun, being a prosecutor, which is sort of the job you have, or being a judge, which is sort of the job that a commissioner has?
It's a very hard question to answer because I used to be a cartel investigation before I actually became commissioner. So for me, it's nice to change roles. It's very hard for me to pick one, but it's nice for me because I've been in the council for 4 years, and to switch to the position of a prosecutor for me, it was something not new because I used to be a cartel investigator, but it's nice to bounce back to what I used to do before. But it's kind of hard to choose though.
But both are more fun jobs.
They're very fun jobs, I'd say. It's very fun to work in competition.
Let's talk about CADE. As I understand it, the superintendent role that you have now used to exist outside of CADE and has been brought into it. Maybe if you could help us understand the changes that took place that have resulted in CADE having new responsibilities and the other authorities having their roles kind of wound down.
Oh, well, actually, I have to go back a little bit to try to explain that. So the Brazilian system used to have 3 different bodies. One in the Ministry of Finance, the other one in the Ministry of Justice, and CADE, which was an independent agency. I'm kind of the result of these 2 bundle up together. So I would say that I am now what used to be the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Justice, which actually each one of them did investigatory work, either in mergers or in anti-competitive conduct. So they bundle up together in what now is the superintendents.
And would cases of those 2 agencies have been brought up to CADE as the tribunal before the law changed?
Yes.
I see.
So right now, the one good thing that we have is we don't have as many bosses as we used to. So it's easier to actually discuss the cases and try to solve the cases. You don't have to go to 3 different places in order to get a final decision.
And the bosses are all in the same building.
Yes, we're all together.
How have the changes, assuming they have, helped streamline the internal processes for handling mergers and abuse of dominance and cartel and other cases?
I'd say that it has improved a lot. First of all, not only because of the change in the structure, but also the change in the regulation. Now we have a suspensory system. It's a pre-merger system. It wasn't like that before. And now a lot of people were concerned that we wouldn't take fast-track cases in a fast way. And this has been solved. We created a pre-merger notification office, which is pretty much like the one that you guys have in the U.S. to sort out the cases which are complex from the ones that which are not, and the results have been great. So the changes are structural, the changes are in the regulations, and the changes are in the management. We did a lot of benchmarking trying to see what other people did all around the world to get the best practices, not only in the laws and the regulations, but also in the management solutions. And the results have been great. We actually have an average now of 20 days or less for analyzing fast-track cases. And for non-fast-track cases, but are not complex, really complex mergers, I would say intermediate mergers, we are having like a 40-day average, which is really, really good. Especially if you consider the number of people that we have here working for us.
That sounds great. Has it improved transparency and judicial certainty? Have the changes that have taken place in the law and the way you've implemented it at CADE so far, has it improved transparency, and do you think it will improve
I'd say that
certainty?
We've always been transparent. CADE, I think, is one of the very few, if not the only antitrust agency that has a broadcast live of the sessions. So you can actually hear, there's a bit of a barrier with the Portuguese, but you can actually hear the sessions all over the world through the internet. So I would say that we've always been transparent. But I would say that also we got a little more certainty because it's a pre-merger regime rather than a post-merger regime. So people have less incentive to go to the judiciary because we don't have like 3 years after the case came in a decision for rejection of the merger. This is not going to happen anymore. We have a timeline, we have deadlines for that, for the analysis, and it's a pre-merger stage. So I think it's going to be a reduction in these very complex cases. They're not going to go to the judiciary anymore. I don't see that happening anymore.
Well, let's talk about cartel cases just for a little bit. Have the changes affected your ability to impose significant fines on cartels, or had any other changes that relate to penalizing cartels?
I'd say that we are thinking about actually regulating a bit further, trying to implement several changes which were not in the law, the new law, especially to get second-ins and third-ins, because we didn't have that as clear as it should be. As you'd see, like in many other countries, you have specific sorts of ranges of rebates that you can give for collaboration from second-ins and third-ins. We didn't have that. We're trying to put that in public consultation right now.
So you've been engaged in some reforms of the leniency process?
Yes. I'd say for the whole process for cartel cases. And this is something that we did before for mergers, because that was something that we kind of have to have that ready at the time of the change, and now we're doing this in the cartel work.
One of the important roles, I think, for competition authorities, especially in developing countries, probably many developed countries as well, is competition advocacy. Is that something that CADE is doing now, either continuing what it did before, or as any part of a new responsibility? Or does that reside somewhere else?
Part of the advocacy work, it's residing with the Ministry of Finance, especially when it's related to regulatory rules that has some sort of impact, in competition. But there's a lot of advocacy work that we actually do, mainly try to explain to people, to businessmen, the benefits of leniency, and to try to a certain extent, to create this value for competition, which is not something inherently in the Brazilian minds. This is something that we have to build, and we do that through seminars, we do that in congresses, we do that organizing meetings or participating in chambers, just to try to explain the benefits of competition, the kind of benefits that you can bring down to society. We do that on occasion also in other venues. We do that international also. But the one thing that I think it's difficult in that regard is to try to explain to people the kind of benefits that competition can bring, because this is something very diluted in time. It's not an immediate measure, and to try to convey this idea to businessmen is not as easy.
Are there any particular